The crystal mines of 442B had fallen silent 3 days ago. Commander Al of the Hegemony 4th Fleet stood before the massive viewing port of his flagship, watching the orange glow of the planet's twin suns paint the mining colony in shades of rust and blood. Below, the geometric structures of the extraction facilities lay in ruins, their metallic surfaces by weapon fire and the acidic breath of the devourers. "Status report," Al commanded, his forearms working the control interface with practiced efficiency. His species, had been the military backbone of the galactic hegemony for over 2,000 years. Their natural coordination and tactical brilliance had secured victory in countless campaigns across the spiral arm. "Sir, the Devourer swarm has completely overrun grid sectors 7 through 15, reported Subcommander Is, her voice tight with barely controlled fear. "Estimated Devourer count is approaching 2 million individual organisms. The colonists—" She paused, her secondary arms trembling slightly. "The colonists are gone, sir, all of them." Al closed his primary eyes, feeling the weight of command pressing down on his carapace like the crushing depths of his abyssal trenches. 23,000 civilians, mining families, engineers, scientists studying the unique crystalline formations that made this world so valuable to the hegemony's energy grid, all consumed by the endless hunger of the Devourers. The Devourers had appeared in this sector 6 months ago, emerging from the dark spaces between stars like a plague of living nightmares. They were not a species in any traditional sense, but rather a collective organism that consumed all biological matter in their path, growing stronger and more numerous with each world they stripped bare. Their ships, if they could be called ships, were living creatures the size of cities, pulsing with bioluminescent veins and equipped with weapons that fired streams of corrosive enzymes. "What of the evacuation fleet from station?" Al asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Lost contact 14 hours ago, sir. Long-range sensors detected debris fields consistent with complete hull dissolution." His voice carried the hollow tone of someone delivering too much bad news in too short a time. The bridge fell silent except for the soft hum of life support systems and the distant vibration of the ship's massive engines. Al turned from the viewport to face his crew. 47 of the finest military minds in the hegemony, all staring at him with the same expression he had seen too often in recent months, the look of soldiers who had run out of hope. "Sir," came a voice from the communications station, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Fleet Command." On screen, the main display shimmered to life, revealing the weathered features of Admiral or Supreme Commander of the Hegemony Fleet. The old warrior's battle scars seemed more pronounced than usual, and his usually immaculate uniform bore the wrinkled appearance of someone who had not slept in days. "Commander Al," the Admiral's voice crackled through the transmission, "I'm ordering immediate withdrawal of all forces in the system. The Devourers have broken through our defensive lines at Rigel. We're falling back to establish new positions at the Altair checkpoint. Sir, with respect, if we abandon 442B, the Devourers will have access to the entire Outer Rim mining network. The energy crystals here power half our fleet operations." Admiral Orr was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of absolute defeat. "Commander, the Outer Rim is lost. The inner colonies are lost. In 72 hours, the Devourer swarms will reach the core worlds. We estimate complete systemic collapse within 2 weeks." The bridge crew exchanged glances of shock and disbelief. The core worlds were home to over 40 billion beings across 17 species, the heart of galactic civilization for the past 5,000 years. The idea that they could simply fall was unthinkable. "What about the ancient defense protocols?" Al asked. "The weapons caches left by the predecessor races." "Exhausted, ineffective, the Devourers adapt to everything we throw at them." The Admiral paused, looking directly into the camera. "Commander, I'm transmitting final extraction coordinates. Get your people out of there. That's an order." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Al looked around at his crew, seeing his own despair reflected in their faces. They had never retreated from a fight. Their warrior culture had been built on the principle that any enemy could be defeated with sufficient courage and tactical brilliance. But how do you fight an enemy that grows stronger with each victory? How do you defeat hunger itself? "Sir," whispered Navigation Officer, "what are your orders?" Al was about to give the retreat command when the sensor array began screaming with alarm signals. Every screen on the bridge lit up with warning indicators, and the ship's defensive systems automatically powered to combat readiness. "Report," Al barked. "Unknown contacts dropping out of hyperspace," called the sensor operator, his voice rising with panic. "Massive energy signatures. Sir, I'm reading at least 300 vessels, but the configuration is unlike anything in our databases." On the main screen, ships began materializing out of the swirling vortex of hyperspace. They were crude and angular, built from what appeared to be steel and ceramic composites rather than the elegant bioorganic materials favored by most spacefaring races. Flames erupted from their engines in controlled explosions, and their hulls bore scorch marks and battle damage that spoke of recent combat. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission. It's on all frequencies simultaneously." "Put it through." The voice that emerged from the speakers was unlike anything they had ever heard. It was rough and harsh, carrying an edge of barely controlled violence that sent instinctive shivers down their spines. "Attention alien vessels. This is General Sarah of the Human Colonial Marines. We've been tracking the Devourer swarm for the past 3 months, and we're here to end this fight. To any friendly forces in the area, maintain your positions and prepare for combined operations. To the Devourers." The voice paused, and when it continued, it carried a tone of cold, absolute certainty. "Your feeding time is over." Al stared at the screen as hundreds of human ships moved into attack formation, their weapons charging with deadly purpose. He had never heard of this species before, but something in their leader's voice sparked the first ember of hope he had felt in months. General Sarah stood in the command center of the UES Defiance, watching the tactical displays show the massive Devourer swarm covering the surface of 442B like a living carpet of death. Her weathered hands gripped the rail as she studied the alien ships maintaining position near the planet's outer orbit. 3 days ago, these vessels had been preparing to flee. Now they hung motionless, their crews probably trying to figure out whether humanity represented salvation or just another way to die. "Admiral," she spoke into her comm unit, "confirm fleet status." "All 300 ships ready for deployment, General. The orbital drop core is loaded and waiting for your signal. Marine battalions report full readiness across all vessels." The voice of Admiral Jack carried the confidence of a man who had spent the last decade preparing for exactly this moment. Sarah nodded, her eyes never leaving the swirling mass of Devourers below. Humanity had been tracking this threat for months, following the trail of consumed worlds from the outer edge of known space. Each dead system had taught them something new about their enemy, and each lesson had been paid for in blood. "Open a channel to the alien fleet," she ordered. The main screen shifted to show the bridge of the lead alien vessel. The creature standing there was unlike anything in human databases, tall and angular, with 4 arms and eyes that seemed to hold the weight of countless defeats. When it spoke, the translation software rendered its words in stilted but understandable English. "This is Commander Al of the Hegemony 4th Fleet. General, I must advise you that the enemy below cannot be defeated through conventional warfare. We have lost over 40 worlds to these creatures. They adapt to every weapon, every strategy. I strongly recommend immediate withdrawal to preserve your forces." Sarah's expression didn't change. She had heard similar warnings from the few survivors they had managed to pull from Devourer-ravaged systems. Fear had a way of making the impossible seem absolute. "Commander Al," she replied, "with respect, humanity has been fighting impossible odds since we first picked up sticks to hunt animals 10 times our size. We've studied the Devourers for months, and we've learned something your people might have missed." "And what is that?" "They're not invincible, they're just hungry." Sarah turned to her weapons officer. "Lieutenant Hayes, initiate operation." Across the human fleet, massive bay doors began opening. What emerged was not the sleek fighters or missile batteries that most spacefaring races would deploy, but thousands upon thousands of individual drop pods, each one containing a single human marine in powered armor. They fell toward the planet like a meteor shower of death, their heat shields glowing white-hot as they punched through the atmosphere. On the surface of 442B, the Devourer swarm detected the incoming threats and began to mobilize. Massive bioforms, each the size of a city block, rose from the crystalline structures where they had been feeding. Their mouths opened to reveal rows of teeth designed to dissolve molecular bonds, while acidic projectiles launched skyward to intercept the human drop pods. But something the Devourers had not encountered in their previous conquests happened next. Instead of trying to avoid the incoming fire, the human drop pods accelerated directly into it. Their ablative armor burned away under the acid assault, but beneath lay layers of ceramics and metal alloys that had been specifically designed to resist biological dissolution. Pod after pod slammed into the surface, their occupants emerging with weapons that spat fire and fury. "This is Sergeant Maria Santos' 1st Battalion," crackled a voice over the comm. "Touching down in Grid Sector 12. Holy hell, these things are big. Engaging now." The humans fought like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. Where other races relied on energy weapons and sophisticated technology, humanity brought brutal simplicity. Their weapons fired solid projectiles at hypersonic velocities, tearing through devourer bioarmor that had proven impervious to laser fire. When their ammunition ran low, they switched to plasma weapons that burned at temperatures hot enough to vaporize organic tissue faster than it could regenerate. But it was not their weapons that made the difference. It was how they fought. Other species in the galaxy had evolved beyond tribal warfare, developing sophisticated tactics based on preservation of force and strategic objectives. Humans, it seemed, had never forgotten how to hate their enemies with every fiber of their being. They charged directly into the mouths of creatures designed to devour them, using grenades to destroy bioforms from the inside. When their armor failed, they continued fighting with salvaged weapons and improvised explosives. When those ran out, they used their bare hands. Commander Al watched the battle unfold on his screens with growing amazement. How are they able to resist the dissolution enzymes? Our best armor plating dissolves within seconds of contact. General's voice came through the comm with what might have been amusement. "Commander, humans come from a planet where everything is trying to kill us. Our ocean is full of creatures with venom that can stop a heart in minutes. Our air carries diseases that dissolve lung tissue. Hell, our own star bombards us with radiation that causes cancer. We've been building immunity to hostile biology for 200,000 years." On the surface, the tide of battle began to shift. The Devourers, for the first time in their expansion across the galaxy, encountered prey that refused to be consumed quietly. Every human killed took dozens of bioforms with them, and the ones who survived kept fighting with an intensity that bordered on madness. "2nd Battalion reporting," called another voice. "We've secured the primary crystal mine. These ugly bastards don't like it when you cook them from the inside, requesting immediate reinforcement for push toward the spawning pools." "Negative on reinforcements," replied Colonel Martinez from orbit. "All available forces are committed to their assigned sectors. Hold your position and continue the mission." "Roger that, sir. Santos, you still alive down there?" "Barely," came the reply, punctuated by the sound of explosions. "Lost half my squad, but we've taken out what looks like a queen form. Thing was the size of a skyscraper. These creatures bleed just like everything else." The Devourer swarm began to falter. For millions of years, they had consumed world after world, growing stronger with each victory. Their biological imperative was simple: consume, adapt, multiply. But they had never encountered a species that fought with such savage determination that dying seemed preferable to retreat. Hours passed. The orange suns of 442b began to set, casting long shadows across a battlefield littered with the remains of both attackers and defenders. Slowly, impossibly, the human forces began to establish secure perimeters around the major population centers. "General," Commander Al's voice carried a note of disbelief, "your forces are actually pushing them back." "The day is still young, Commander, but yes, we're winning." Sarah studied the tactical display showing human positions slowly expanding across the planet's surface. The Devourers made one critical mistake. Which was? They assumed that because other species surrender when faced with extinction, humans would do the same. Sarah's smile was cold and predatory. "They've never dealt with a species stupid enough to fight impossible odds just because someone told us we couldn't win." Sergeant Maria Santos crouched behind the twisted remains of a crystal extraction tower, her plasma rifle cycling through its cooling sequence as waves of heat shimmered from the barrel. Around her, the ruins of mining complex Delta stretched in all directions, transformed into a hellscape of melted metal and crystalline debris. The air itself seemed to burn with the acrid smell of dissolved biomatter and spent ammunition. "Status report," she called into her comm, wiping alien blood from her visor. Lost into a spitter form about 10 minutes ago, came the reply from her demolitions expert. But we managed to take out its acid sac before it could multiply. Williams is setting charges on what looks like a nursery complex about 2 clicks east of your position. Maria nodded, checking her ammo counter. 67 rounds remaining plus the backup power cell for her plasma caster. Not much, but she had started the day with less and somehow still been breathing by sunset. The math of human warfare was simple: make the enemy pay more for each meter than they were willing to spend. Santos, this is Command. General's voice cut through the static. We're reading massive bioform movement converging on your sector. Looks like you've gotten their attention. Copy that, Command. How massive are we talking? Seismic sensors indicate at least 50 individual creatures, each registering over 200 tons. You've got maybe 20 minutes before they reach your position. Maria looked around at what remained of her squad. 8 Marines, down from the 24 who had dropped with her that morning. Each of them had the hollow-eyed look of soldiers who had been fighting for their lives since dawn, but none showed any signs of backing down. Command, requesting immediate extraction for my team. Negative, Santos. All are committed to evacuation operations in the northern sectors. You're going to have to hold your position until we can get to you. Private Williams looked up from the explosive charges he was arranging around a massive bioform carcass. Sarge, we can't hold against 50 of those things, not with 8 people. Maria was about to respond when movement caught her eye. In the distance, ships were descending through the atmosphere, but these weren't human. The elegant curves and bioorganic hulls marked them as belonging to the alien fleet that had been observing the battle from orbit. Command, I'm seeing alien ships moving toward our position. Please advise. Those are assault shuttles, General replied. Commander Al has decided to join the party. Try not to shoot each other. The alien ships touched down about 500 meters from Maria's position, their doors opening to disgorge dozens of 4-armed soldiers in powered armor that looked like it had been grown rather than manufactured. They moved with fluid grace, their multiple limbs allowing them to operate weapons and equipment simultaneously in ways that would have been impossible for humans. Commander Al himself led the charge, his command armor distinguished by the intricate scarification that covered its surface. He moved directly toward Maria's position, speaking into a translation device attached to his helmet. Sergeant Santos, his mechanical voice carried an edge of determination. My troops are equipped with heavy energy weapons and shield generators. We can assist in the defense of this position. Maria studied the alien commander for a moment, nodding the way his secondary hands never stopped moving over his weapon controls while his primary hands gestured as he spoke. Respectfully, sir, your people have been retreating from these things for months. What makes you think standing and fighting now will make any difference? Al paused, his 4 eyes focusing on the human sergeant with an intensity that was almost uncomfortable. Because in 6 hours, your species has accomplished what mine could not achieve in 6 months. You have shown that the Devourers can be killed, and if they can be killed, then they can be defeated. The ground began to vibrate with the approach of the Devourer swarm. Through the heat shimmer on the horizon, massive bioforms began to emerge, moving with the terrible purpose of creatures that had never experienced defeat. Their acid weapons began to glow with bioluminescent energy, preparing to dissolve anything that stood in their path. All right, Commander, Maria said, checking her rifle one last time. Welcome to the human way of war. Rule 1, when the enemy outnumbers you 10 to 1, make sure you're fighting in a place where numbers don't matter. She turned to her squad. Williams, are those charges ready? Affirmative, Sarge. Enough explosives to bring down half the mining complex. Perfect. Commander Al, can your shield generators protect us from falling debris? For a limited time, yes. But Sergeant, if you bring down the complex, we will be trapped here with the Devourers. Maria smiled, an expression that somehow made the alien commander more nervous than the approaching swarm. Sir, that's not a problem, that's the point. The first wave of Devourer bioforms crested the ridge line, their massive bodies moving with surprising speed across the broken terrain. Acid projectiles began to streak toward the combined human position, dissolving chunks of crystal and metal wherever they struck. Shields up, Al commanded, and energy barriers sprang to life around the defensive position. Open fire, Maria shouted, and suddenly the air filled with the combined fury of human kinetic weapons and energy beams. The battle was unlike anything either species had experienced. The humans fought with their characteristic brutal efficiency, using the terrain and debris to channel the Devourer advance into killing zones. The provided supporting fire and shield coverage, their tactical coordination allowing them to concentrate firepower on priority targets. But the numbers were overwhelming. For every bioform they destroyed, two more took its place. Acid began to eat through the shield generators, and ammunition counters steadily counted down towards zero. Maria called out, "How long until those charges are ready?" 30 seconds, Sarge." A massive spitter form broke through their perimeter, its maw opening to reveal a throat lined with acid-producing glands. Al stepped directly into its path, his shield generator overloading as he absorbed the creature's attack at point-blank range. His armor began to dissolve, but he held his position long enough for Maria to put 3 plasma rounds into the bioform's brain cluster. "Commander," she called out, but the alien warrior was already back on his feet, switching to backup equipment without missing a beat. 10 seconds, shouted over the chaos. The Devourer swarm sensed the impending trap and began to surge forward with desperate fury. Bioforms the size of tanks crashed into their defensive line, overwhelming through sheer mass and numbers. Now, Maria screamed. Triggered the explosives. The world disappeared in fire and thunder. Massive support columns that had held up the mining complex for decades shattered like glass, sending millions of tons of crystal and metal crashing down on the Devourer swarm. The roar of collapsing infrastructure was so loud that it could be heard from orbit. When the dust finally settled, Commander Al found himself lying next to Sergeant Santos in a small pocket of space protected by the twisted remains of a support beam. Around them, the remains of the Devourer swarm lay crushed beneath the weight of an entire mining facility. "Sergeant," he said quietly, "that was the most insane tactical decision I have ever witnessed." Maria laughed, the sound echoing strangely in their improvised shelter. "Commander, you haven't seen anything yet. Wait until you meet the rest of the human military." Above them, they could hear the sound of rescue equipment beginning to clear the debris. The battle for 442B was far from over, but for the first time in months, it felt like something other than a retreat. Admiral Jack stood in the observation deck of the UES Defiance, watching as the last of the Devourer bioships burned in the space above 442B. The massive organic vessels, once seemingly invincible engines of consumption, now drifted as dead hulks among the debris of their own making. Beside him, Fleet Admiral Or of the Hegemony watched with the expression of someone witnessing the impossible made real. "In 48 hours, Or said quietly, your species has accomplished what the combined forces of 17 civilizations could not achieve in 6 months. Nodded, but his expression remained grim. "Admiral, with respect, we haven't won anything yet. We've killed one swarm on one world. Intelligence estimates indicate at least 30 more Devourer swarms operating throughout this galactic arm. But you have proven they can be defeated. That changes everything." The human admiral turned from the viewport, his weathered features showing the strain of the past 2 days. "What it proves is that the Devourers aren't the unstoppable force everyone thought they were, but that doesn't make them easy to kill." A communication alert chimed, and the voice of General filled the observation deck. "Admiral's surface operations are complete. Final casualty reports are coming in now." "Go ahead, General." "We lost 63% of the Marines who made planetfall. Out of 12,000 troops deployed, we have 4,400 survivors. Casualties were significantly lower thanks to their shield technology, but they still lost about 30% of their force." The numbers hit the observation deck like a physical blow. Admiral Orr's forearms trembled slightly as he processed the implications. "General, in our previous encounters with the Devourers, we typically lost 98% of all forces deployed. Your casualty rate, while tragic, represents an almost impossible tactical success." Closed his eyes, thinking of the thousands of young men and women who had dropped into hell knowing they probably wouldn't return. "General, what's the status of the Devourer threat assessment?" "Dead, sir. Every last one of them. The bioforms, the spitters, the queens, the whole genetic line has been terminated on this world. More importantly, we've recovered intact samples of their biological systems. Our xenobiology teams think they can develop more effective countermeasures. For the first time in months, Admiral allowed himself to feel something other than despair. General, Commander Al has requested permission to address both fleets. He says it concerns the future of this campaign. Put him through. The main screen shifted to show the bridge of the flagship. Commander Al stood at attention, his armor still bearing scorch marks from the surface battle. Behind him, his crew worked with an energy and purpose that had been absent for months. "Admirals," he began, "I have received word from Fleet Command that the Hegemony Council has voted to formally request a military alliance with humanity. We are prepared to place all remaining hegemony forces under joint human command for the duration of the Devourer crisis." Exchanged glances with General's image on the communication screen. They had discussed this possibility during the planning stages of the operation, but neither had expected it to come so quickly. "Commander," replied carefully, "humanity appreciates the gesture, but we're going to need more than ships and weapons to win this war. We need information." "What kind of information?" "Everything. Every world the Devourers have hit, every tactical engagement, every biological sample your scientists have collected. We need to understand their life cycle, their reproduction methods, their command structure if they have one." Admiral stepped forward. "Admiral, I can provide you with tactical data from over 400 separate engagements across 17 star systems. But I must warn you, the scope of this threat is beyond anything your species has faced. The Devourers have consumed over 200 billion sentient beings." "How many worlds are we talking about?" 43 inhabited systems completely devoured. Another 61 systems currently under assault. The refugee crisis alone involves over 3 billion displaced civilians. Felt the weight of those numbers settle on his shoulders like a physical burden. Humanity had been fighting its own colonial wars and border skirmishes for the past century, conflicts that involved millions of casualties at most. The scale of the Devourer threat was almost incomprehensible. "Admiral General interrupted. "What's the status of the core worlds? How much time do we have before they reach the major population centers?" "Based on current Devourer expansion rates, approximately 6 weeks before they reach the outer core systems, 3 months before they threaten the galactic capital." Turn to study the star charts displayed on the tactical screen. The Devourer expansion showed a terrifyingly logical pattern, following major shipping lanes and consuming the most resource-rich worlds first. They were not random monsters, but strategic predators with an intelligence behind their hunger. "General, I want you to begin immediate deployment of Marine forces to the 3 most likely Devourer targets in the outer core. Admiral, we'll need every ship you can spare for transport and fire support." "Admiral," Commander Al interjected, "the hegemony military doctrine has always emphasized defensive positioning and strategic withdrawal when facing overwhelming odds. Your tactical approach seems to involve seeking direct confrontation regardless of enemy strength." Smiled grimly. "Commander, that's because you've been thinking of the Devourers as an unstoppable natural disaster. We see them as just another enemy that bleeds when you shoot them. The only difference is scale. And if the scale proves too large, then we make it smaller." Turned to address both admirals simultaneously. "Humanity has been fighting extinction-level threats since we first climbed down from the trees. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, plagues that killed 90% of our population. We're still here because we never learned how to quit." Admiral studied the human admiral with something approaching awe. "Your species has survived multiple extinction events. 6 major ones and dozens of smaller catastrophes that should have ended us. We've been wiped out so many times that evolution gave up trying to make us sensible. Instead, it made us too stubborn to die." The communication screen chimed with an incoming priority message. General's image was replaced by that of Dr. Elizabeth Warren, head of the Colonial Defense Force's Xenobiology Division. "Admiral, we've completed our preliminary analysis of the Devourer biosamples. I think you need to see this immediately." "Go ahead, Doctor." "Sir, the Devourers aren't just a predator species. They're a weapon. Their genetic structure shows clear evidence of artificial modification. Someone or something designed these creatures to consume biological matter and convert it into additional bioforms. The observation deck fell silent as the implications of this discovery sank in. If the devourers were artificial, then somewhere in the galaxy was the intelligence that had created them. "Doctor," Admiral Orr asked quietly, "do you have any indication of who might have engineered these creatures?" "Negative, sir. But based on the sophistication of the genetic modifications, we're looking at a technology base at least 10,000 years more advanced than anything currently known in the galaxy." Looked out at the stars, suddenly aware that the war they had just begun fighting was far larger and more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Somewhere out there was an enemy with the power to create species-destroying weapons and the willingness to use them. "Admiral Orr," he said finally, "I think it's time humanity met the rest of the galactic community. And I think it's time the galaxy learned how humans fight when everything they care about is threatened." "What are your orders, Admiral?" Smile was cold and predatory, carrying the promise of violence that had been humanity's answer to extinction for 200,000 years. "We're going to find whoever made these things, and then we're going to teach them why you don't threaten species that are too stupid to know when they're beaten." The war for the galaxy had begun, and for the first time since the Devourer threat emerged, the outcome was no longer certain. Humanity had come to the stars, and they had brought their wars with them.